Hi there, and welcome to Cool People. Now, over the last 2.5 years or so, since coming out as being trans and doing lots of trans awareness training, public speaking, and media appearances on the subject, I've met all sorts of incredible people who I've made friends with. And so the whole idea of this series is to share my friends with you. And today's guest is no exception at all. She's an amazing person, and she's got an incredible story to tell. So, buckle up for this one, I'll tell you. So today's guest is Rebecca Tallon de Havilland, and she's a public speaker on trans and HIV issues. She's a model, a hair and makeup artist. She's the first transgender person in Ireland to receive the gender reassignment surgery, and she's also the transgender affairs editor for Boyz magazine. Whew, wow, you're busy. So, welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's quite a mouthful. And then I suppose to add then that I'm peer support worker at Trans Plus at 56 Dean Street.
You are, aren't you? You're busy. You're very busy.
So, busy girl. But but it's wonderful. And thank you for asking me to do this. I'm delighted you did. Feel quite honoured.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted probably the best thing to do, rather than coming on to the stuff that you're doing currently. It's probably better just to start back at the beginning, just to sort of tell me about the earliest time you felt different in a way, and how that transpired, and then how it led to you doing all the amazing work that you're doing now.
Yeah, I suppose I always like when somebody says that, to kind of go back to the start, because I find it very hard to kind of just jump in halfway through, because I think I think with any trans woman I know or trans person, it's a journey, isn't it? You know what I mean? And it starts way back even before we even knew ourselves in many ways. You know
absolutely. Absolutely.
So basically, I'm 62. I was born in 1958, June 1958. In a small town in Midlands of Ireland, good old Catholic Ireland. I'm the middle child of three, and my mum was the youngest of eight. We come from landowners and shop owners and stuff like that. So my mum and dad separated when we were very young, so that brought kind of disgrace to the family. So she anyway went to Dublin and worked in Dublin and went to college to learn more stuff. She didn't just want to be a housewife or a deserted housewife, which was called back then when her husband left you. So kind of my granny kind of then looked after us. And my first 7 years of my life were probably the most idyllic I've ever known. I didn't even realise I didn't have a father, didn't realise any of that went on. We were very shielded and looked after. Went to the convent school, loved it. It was mixed. So the reason I say that, there was no emphasis put on the fact that you were a boy or a girl. I was just there. And then when I'd come home, I would put neck curtains on my head and pretend I had long hair. And Granny let me do that. I played with dolls. And that doesn't indicate whatever you're going to be, but I did. I loved the dolls, and I used to kind of dress them. And I was just in my own little bubble. And I was allowed to be that, you know. And I remember then there was Irish dancing on a Saturday, and I wanted to do it. And the only reason I wanted to do it was I got to wear a kilt. For me, was a skirt. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah.
So it was just like kind of wonderful. But that all changed drastically at the age of 7. Like it went from that to, I mean, it was crazy. Then all of a sudden, myself and my brother, were put into boarding school in Dublin, an all-boys school. And that was the first time I actually felt I was a boy. I thought that they'd gotten it wrong. Because I have to say, I probably had the most progressive granny ever, because she just allowed me be me.
Yeah.
There was never anything ever. She wouldn't say to me, you shouldn't be doing that, and you shouldn't be putting on your sister's dresses, and you shouldn't be doing. She just allowed me do it, and I felt quite comfortable. And I think my brother and sister either side of me felt the same as well, you know. It was going into boarding school was a huge change. I mean, it was drastic. And then it got even worse, because I was sexually abused from the age of 7 until I was 12.
Oh, no.
11 and a half, actually. And when they stopped abusing me, I thought I'd done something wrong because I'd gotten that used to it. So when I came out of boarding school at the age of 12, after going in a very innocent, content 7-year-old, at 12, I mean, I knew more than I should do.
Oh, that's horrendous.
Yeah, and then my mom at this stage, I suppose, her career was going really well, and she was going really well. So then we were put into a rugby school, which was a boys' school. And people often, I don't know if you ever get asked these questions, but I often hear a lot of either LGBT people, especially trans people, get bullied along the way. I know I was sexually abused, but I was never bullied. I think I've always been that kind of ringleader, kind of. I've always in trouble, always doing something up to mischief of some description. And then sometimes I think maybe my brother was a year younger than me and taller, but he was really good at sport. And they all wanted him on what the football team it was on. So maybe I got away with it because of that. Do you know what I mean? Because he was so popular sport-wise. But thank God I never kind of witnessed anything like that. But I think by the time I got to 15, and even though I was in a rugby school, I was very unhappy. And those thoughts would still keep coming back into my head that were there from the age of 3. I want to be a girl. I just want to be a girl. I want my proper body. You know what I mean? This isn't right. I remember before I went to boarding school, I'm Catholic, we knelt down at night, said our prayers, and we had a special prayer. And mine always was that I'd wake up in the morning and be like my sister. And people sometimes think we get influenced by that. I have to remind people, I was born in 1958. We barely had television until the 60s,
Yeah.
I came from a very small rural town. There was no influences there. It was just how I felt.
There was no internet then, was there?
Absolutely. So So that stayed with me. But I sometimes think as well, I was lucky in the sense of I had the 70s. I was a teenager in the 70s. I was 13 in 1971, right? So then I had a beautiful kind of ride in the 70s. Got expelled from school. They put me in hairdressing because I was always playing with dolls. And it was a trade. And of course, I loved hairdressing. I loved it. But it was all around that time where unisex hair salons were just started. People forget this as well. Before that, it was barbershops for men and saloons for women. Do you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden, these unisex hair salons were cropping up, where men and women were getting their hair done in the same. Like we go on now about different gender stuff now. Back then, a man and a woman going into a hair salon together was like unprecedented. It wasn't heard of. We get that, don't we?
We do. So,
of course, I got a job, and then, of course, David Bowie came out. And, of course, for me, the 70s was kind of very non-binary, very gender fluid. It didn't have any names to it. It just was what it was. If you think of Mark Bolan, you think of glam rock.
Yeah.
So they were my teenage years. And I always say, whether you were heterosexual, man or woman, or whatever, we all seemed to dress the same. It was long hair, little tank tops, flared jeans, and big, godforsaken platforms.
Yeah.
You know I remember my granny saying, from behind you wouldn't know which was a boy or a girl. And I remember her one day saying, my God, you wouldn't know who was Artha or Martha.
That's right, yeah.
And it was so true. But then I suppose things changed and things moved on and it got a bit more serious. I remember towards the end of the 70s and getting called, don't get me wrong, especially being a hairdresser, getting called a queer and a puff and all these names. So I had a girlfriend and we were like kind of best friends. She was my sister's friend as well. And we decided to go out with each other as boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. And I remember kind of opening up to her and telling her that I felt I should have been a girl. And she agreed with me. And she kind of then said, well, I'll kind of be your girlfriend. Sure, we don't have to tell anybody. And one thing led to another.
Wow.
And we got married.
What sort of age were you then?
I was 19.
Okay.
19. Now, this is the funny part as well. Like, I mean, how people, it just goes to show you how people can actually choose to be ignorant and choose not to see things. When we were getting married, I picked the wedding dress.
Really?
I picked the veil. I picked the bridesmaids' outfits. Now,
Wow.
I can tell you here and now, if I was marrying a man today and he was picking my wedding dress, I'd say, I think we better think this out again. So, yeah.
Wow.
And then for our honeymoon, we came to London to go clothes shopping. Come on. But anyway, we
There's a
did
clue there.
Yes, you know. So anyway, we managed to like be intimate a couple of times, and she got pregnant, and we had this beautiful daughter. And I think that's when things started to get very serious. And of course, she knew my history and knew what I was wanted, and then she wanted to kind of pull away from me. And then it was being used against me because I was being called this queer. And of course, it was Ireland. And my daughter was born in 1980. She'll actually be 40 on the 22nd of this month. And all of a sudden, my whole world fell apart because I loved my child. Do you know what I mean? I loved her so dearly. And I had no rights. I had no legal rights. You know what I mean? I always refer back to, it was still even illegal in Ireland to be homosexual up to 1993. So we're talking
1993. Blimey, because in England it was 1967, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
God,
so
just so many years behind.
Yeah. So in 1980, this was a scandal, and I hadn't a leg to stand on. So then, I suppose, there again, going back to the fact, well, what was I? Who am I? Who is this person? I love girls, but I love them as friends. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sexually attracted to them, but I love boys. So I suppose back then, well, if you're a boy and you like boys, then you've got to be gay. So I tried that. I came out in all colours, blazing red. I'm out. 1982 or 83. I think it was 82. And I had a few encounters there, quite a few. And I just felt exactly for me the same as it did if I was with a girl. It didn't feel right because I wasn't right. So I just became more into myself. I introverted. I grew into myself. I excelled in my career because I think I took everything out on my career. I put everything into it. I became the best hairdresser, the best makeup artist because I didn't have to think. I was working around the clock. I became a model agent. I was growing. I was doing Eurovision Song Contest. I was doing Harper's and Queen, Vogue, all the Irish magazines. I was non-stop because I didn't have to stop and think. But as we all know, everybody has to stop and think or something takes over. I had 2 or 3 attempts at suicide. You know what I mean? I just wanted to end it. I just wanted to leave this world. Because I'm a Catholic, I was still thinking, even though I was fashion, I was everything, and I thought I was broad-minded, back in my head, my upbringing of being a Catholic, what I thought was evil, it was wrong. It couldn't be right. So I was really tormented. So I moved back to London in 1983. And that's when things started to kind of change. I started to see a difference. Started hanging around Soho. Saw some drag queens, thought, I'm not that. Do you know what I mean? And it was actually, I was touring with Johnny Logan at the time. I was doing his hair and makeup and all of that. And we were we were in Berlin. And myself and the 2 backing singers snuck out one night to go for a drink because we had to be on our best behaviour with him. Anyhow, that's another story. But anyhow, we snuck out and we went to then we ended up in this like really late night bar somewhere in Berlin. To this day, I don't know where in Berlin, but it was. And I saw these 2 girls and they were talking and laughing and they were great. And then they joined us and I thought they were great fun. And then one of them, I had no idea. I just thought these were girls. Then one of them said that they used to be a boy. I went, what? And the minute they started talking, I just knew I had found me. Within minutes, It answered. It was almost like all these things going through my, everything cleared.
Wow.
And I said, that's me. That's me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the relief I felt from that, the relief, you know?
Yeah.
So, and my two friends, that the two backing singers said, real Dublin, said, I could have told you that years ago, love.
Well, it's funny. I've had friends say to me the same sort of thing, you know, but then they sort of said, "Well, but it wasn't my place to tell you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's something you have to work out for yourself, because if anybody else tells you, it doesn't have the same power as you working it out for yourself.
No, it was almost like they were relieved. They were kind of going, "Duh, the light's eventually on, darling."
What took you so long?
Yeah. And from that day onwards, it just went from strength to strength. And then, of course, I had to go through all the GIC clinic and these three different psychiatrists. I used to call them good cop, bad cop, and I won't say what I called the third one on screen. And it was just horrendous. And I got through it. And then I remember having to go in, and the three of them were there together. And they unanimously came back and told me that I was a female trapped in a wrong body. And I could have just said to them, I said, I could have told you that at the first meeting. So, yeah, the things that we had to go through. And then, anyway, I was okay for everything. And I was going to be able to have my surgery and all of that. But at this stage, it was 1986, going into 1987. And AIDS had hit AIDS was the big number one. Tombstones falling out of the sky. And no matter what operation you were going for, it was compulsory to have an AIDS test. So I had to go for an AIDS test. I remember actually thinking at the time, I'll be fine, because my intake on AIDS was what I'd heard, like barely listened to it, to be honest with you, but I just thought, well, it's either come from darkest, deepest Africa, or it was not even just on the gay scene, like you had to be doing some very risque sexual things there. So I thought, I haven't done any of that. And, I am quite middle class, so I don't think I would get that. How wrong, how naive we can be. So I went for my test. I think at the time I had to wait maybe over a month for the results. I remember going back in for them. And I kind of felt I was going to be okay, but you still have that kind of thing, maybe. So when I was brought into a room, sat down, I knew there was something wrong. And I was told I had AIDS and that I had 2 years to live. Oh my God. My whole world just fell apart.
Just can't imagine it. No.
I don't think I ever came back from that moment. No. Something in you changes for life after that. And I would strongly suggest that I tell my nearest and dearest, and basically get your ducks in a row. God. It was horrendous. So, of course, and at this stage, the press in Ireland were just like kind of every chance they got, they were just putting horrible photographs. Because, of course, it sold papers, you know what I mean? It was news. And I was like this freak that had been this wonderful golden boy in their eyes, modelled and had a model and in the fashion industry. And they had literally, torn me to shreds. So I thought, if they find out now I have AIDS, there is no hope. And my family had to pull away, because people don't realise that when the press, they're not just having a go at you, they're having a go at your family. Luckily, my daughter didn't know I existed at this stage, because she was pulled away from me, as I told you, years before. Her name was changed, everything, her surname. So she didn't even know. She was still a child anyway. But my nieces and nephews suffered. And they were in school in rural Ireland and being called all these horrible names and about me. And it just, so it's no wonder my family kind of pulled, it's not even that they pulled away from me. It was like they were trying to pull away from the press. And I suppose some resentment, because it's you doing this and we're getting the onslaught of it. You're fine. You're over there in London. We have to live here. So I didn't really want AIDS to get into the press. So I remember going, but I did have to go home because I felt so low and so alone. And like even other trans people here in London at this stage, when I did reach out, were calling me the AIDS-ridden bitch. Do you know what I mean? So I felt even my own community.
That was other trans people.
Yeah,
Horrendous.
yeah. And especially if a guy fancied me, to go over and tell them, "Oh, jump in your horse, she's got AIDS." It was terrible. But that's how cruel it was, you know. So I remember then going home and telling my mum and my aunts and all of that, and I know that they felt for me, but they broke me. Now at this stage, you must remember, I'm on hormones, right? I've been refused my operations. I'm a bag of whatever is going on. I'm a mess. And then they bring me to a monastery, hoping that this could be exorcised out of me. I'm serious.
God.
And obviously that didn't happen.
Surprise, surprise. Oh, God.
So I came back to London, but at this stage, all I can say is you can only imagine what state my head was in.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, I got through it. I kept fighting on. I ended up working in really seedy bars, did some prostitution because that's what I had to do. And I often say this was not on my to-do list, but it was something I had to do, you know, to survive.
Mm.
And then I had to save the money. And then I found out maybe about 1990 that there was somebody that would operate on people that had HIV. And you must remember there was still no medication or anything for anybody living with AIDS at the time, at this stage. And anyway, got to the point where I was able to have my operation done in 91. I had to sign papers saying I was getting this, I was going to have to do this at my own risk, that there was a very strong possibility that I might die on the operating table. Because I think back then it was 7 hours or something, it was longer than open heart surgery. I said, I don't care. I said, just make sure you do the operation. I said, I said, I don't want to die as I was born. And he was really nice, I have to say. He was really nice. And I came to, I was in hospital for 10 days. I was very weak. But I came out, and I think I thought, right, I have everything. I have my lower surgery, I have my boobs, I have everything. This is what I want. You know, everything will be okay once that's all done. And in ways, it was body-wise. And I used to be afraid to say it to other people because people say, oh, you did the wrong thing, you shouldn't have done that. But I think I thought once all of this would happen, would be done, that my life would change for the better. But in ways, it was worse because I think even with my family, they thought I might grow out of it, or it's probably a phase I'm going through.
It's quite a long phase, isn't it?
It's a long phase. But I think they live in hope, you know what I mean? That this will. So I kind of felt even more isolated. And I felt that there was loads of services for trans people beforehand. They tear you to shreds beforehand. Then they operate on you. Then they throw you back out in the streets and say, okay, there, you're done now, off you go. And there was no aftercare service at all. And I felt this was really badly needed at the time. But I just got lost in drugs and alcohol and clubbing it. And for a long time, my life was just a big blur. Boyfriends have been beaten up. I remember at one stage being raped 3 times. And then one came back to just pee on me, just for, yeah. And you know what? I was that numb at that stage in my life that it didn't even upset me anymore. But in 2006, for some reason, I had gone through the wars with all the, like I had been, and I say this because for me, it's really important. I say it as it was and as it is, and I tell the truth. You know, I was the kid that didn't drink. You know, I was the kid that didn't do any of that stuff. But I was the one that ended up being an alcoholic, being a heroin addict, and being on crack cocaine. And working on the streets of Soho for a tenner just to get anything.
Oh.
It's like you just think to yourself, how did this happen? And sometimes I was terrified to even think that I'd had a career in the past, because even to kind of go there, I would just crumble. I just in my mindset was, this is you now. This is your lot. It's never going to get any better.
Mm.
But somewhere around 2006, after being locked up, being put away, being dried out, being all of this, and still coming back out and drinking and drugging, I came to on my living room floor one morning, and my hand was broken and a half bottle of vodka. And to this day, I still don't know if I went out and what happened.
Oh.
But I knew that there was places for recovery and all of that. So I rang and I got help, and I started going to meetings. And bit by bit, I got my life back. Then I got 3 months, and I thought I really needed to drink again. But I knew if I drank again, I would die. So I took an overdose and ended up on a life support machine in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Came out of there and wanted to drink again. Didn't realise I was on suicide watch, and got sectioned in a mental home where people were referring to me, the staff were referring to me as it. Has it had its medicine yet?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And what year was this then? What's
2006, 2007.
not that
Not
long
that
ago, really, is
long.
it?
No.
Not that long ago.
So basically, I came out from that, but I got sober again, and I stayed on the straight and narrow. And to this day, I still haven't picked up a drink. So I got 14 years in October of complete sobriety and off drugs. But then another journey really started after that. I did meet some wonderful people in recovery, and they're still my friends today. And then I found out about Facebook, got on Facebook. I was like a 13-year-old girl. Oh, look at all this. Nah. And I just thought, I typed in my sister's name. I thought she wouldn't be on Facebook. She's very sensible. And there she was. And I messaged her with my friend sitting beside me. And I was like, oh my God. And so I typed. Anyway, she messaged back and she says, please let me talk to you. So they thought I was dead. I hadn't realized that they hadn't even heard from me in over 6 years.
Gosh.
They tried to find me. They tried everything they couldn't. They assumed I had died because they knew I was addicted to drugs and everything. So they came to see me, and my niece came. And at this stage, the last time I'd seen my niece, she was 4. Now she was 19. And it was lovely. And then I went back to Ireland, basically for my birthday in June. This was 2009. And when I was back there, I met this guy that used to have a nightclub like I used to go to, and he said he was opening this other wonderful nightclub, and he'd love me to be the face of it and to do burlesque. And of course, I'm a showgirl at the end of the day. So of course I said, yes, please. And the money was so good.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll give it a shot. I'll do it for 3 months. So I came back to Ireland, and they really looked after me. Beautiful house. I had a Jeep. I was on Ireland AM, television, everything, working in the club a month, and discovered through talking to another person who was working in the club with me, but my daughter.
Wow.
That I hadn't seen from a baby.
Oh, gosh. What are the chances of that?
I know.
Wow.
So, of course, I had along the years, I'd always thought, when I fantasized over meeting my daughter, to have my hair tied back in a nice little bun, I'd be in a nice pair of kind of, capri trousers and a nice little blouse, and I wasn't expecting my daughter to see me with feathers coming out of every Victoria. It was, And the craziest thing of all was my daughter had said to her friend the week before, wouldn't it be great if my dad was like Lady V? And then when she phoned her and told her she couldn't believe it. So,
wow, amazing.
And then her friend told me, now I have a bit more news for you. I said, please, I can't take any more news today. She says, you're also a granny.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of go, oh my God. So my granddaughter at the time was 3. Anyway, I thought I'm going to have to drop this act. The feathers had to go, as you can imagine. So
Wow.
I thought, what am I going to do? I can't run. I can't hide anymore. So I decided to open a model agency again. I realized that Dublin had kind of welcomed me back, and I had done some television interviews and they'd gone down well. I hadn't had much. There again, it was very early days of social media, thank God, as well. And I opened the agency, got all these kind of girls, joining and all of that, was doing really well. And somebody says to me, have you ever thought about writing a book? I said, loads of times. So I got help with writing a book. It was published exactly 10 years ago, October 2009. Yeah, but what are we now? 2010.
What's the book called, in case anybody wants to look at it?
His name is Rebecca, and people say, why do you call it that? It goes back to my sister hearing my niece in the garden one day around the time of all the press about me, and the friends saying to my niece, well, is he your auntie or is he your uncle? And she replies angrily, I don't know. All I know is his name is Rebecca. I was so great. That's how that came about. So anyway, the book came out and I was really terrified. Now, in the book, I do not mention HIV or AIDS because I thought they'll forgive me for running a male brothel in Amsterdam. They'll forgive me for being a prostitute. They'll forgive me for being all those things, but they won't get the AIDS thing or HIV. So the book came out, and you know what? It was probably the best thing I ever did in so many ways, because the amount of people that read my book, it went to bestseller in a week.
Wow.
It became People's Choice, third in the People's Choice. And there was one guy had written a book about John F. Kennedy that year, and it came 10th, and I came third with my book.
Wow, amazing.
I'm in the supermarket. The reality of it is, I'm in the supermarket this day with my sister, walking around, and this nun that was my nun that taught me in first class before I went to boarding school, comes up and grabs my hand and says, I read your book. How come we didn't? And the first thing that comes into my head, brothel in Amsterdam. I go, brothel in Amsterdam. This nun has read my book, brothel in Amsterdam. But she was amazing. She was just amazing, and just said, we feel so guilty that we should have done more. We could have done more. I said, you couldn't have. I didn't even know, all of that. Yeah. But that's all that came into my head, was a nun standing in front of me, my sister beside me. I read your book, brothel in Amsterdam. Nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. So anyway, we moved on from that, and things changed as well. And the agency went really well, but then I wasn't looking after my health. I ran out of HIV meds. I didn't want to go anywhere in Dublin, and I ended up getting very ill. And at this stage, to anybody else, it looked like I'd everything again. Beautiful house, car, beautiful job, money, everything. And people just kept saying to me, Rebecca, you're getting very thin. You look very thin. I thought, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. You can never be too thin or too rich. And then my hair started.
Or have too many shoes.
Or too many shoes. my hair started falling. I just thought, I'm just anxious. And then my nails started everything was going. My teeth started to blacken. Mm. So anyway, the final straw was I couldn't breathe, and I went to my GP, and this was my family GP, come on, from when I was a kid. If I went into him, he kind of had me over there. I don't know what he thought if he examined my body, what he was going to find in replace of a penis. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I remember him checking my back one day, and you could just feel he was touching me like, my God. It was like somebody landing on the moon for the first time. It's the only way I can put it. So this day, he knew I couldn't breathe. So he says, oh dear, he says, you've got pneumonia. I'm going to have to rush you to hospital. And I broke down and I said, oh, I think I should tell you. I've got HIV. Well, he jumped back from me like I had leprosy.
God.
I was rushed to hospital in Dublin, put into this hospital that's just for people that are sex workers or have junkies, whatever. So of course I couldn't get anybody could come and see me in the hospital. I was there for a month. They told me I had 18 months to live.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, and this very good friend of mine, she'd be a pretty famous actress in Ireland. She knew everything about me. We've been friends for years. So she came and collected me and was driving me home. And we were actually we have to sort out the funeral. We're going to have to sort out everything. I remember sitting there in the living room and thinking to myself, probably a trailblazer moment again. I thought, this cannot be it for me. I cannot have done all I've done for it to end now. No way. So I came back to London. Next day, I got a flight back to London, got a second opinion, Chelsea Westminster Hospital. They told me I was very ill, but that there was this kind of treatment coming out of trial from America that was working on people like myself that had a resistance to the medication.
Ah.
But to be honest, I needed to be living here. So I had to give up everything in Ireland again, come back here. And of course, people were just saying, she's never going to be happy because they didn't know about HIV. Here she is, she's everything, and now she's up and running again.
Right. Oh.
So I came back here, and of course, I didn't have anywhere to live as such. So I went to the council. They told me that I'd intentionally made myself homeless a couple of years ago by going back to Ireland. So I was put into a bed and breakfast in Shepherd's Bush, got abused there about being trans. It's a man. Then they moved me into another place, a shared house where I had to share a kitchen and a bathroom with a heroin addict and a crackhead. One a man, one a woman, in different rooms. And then one of them stabbed the other 7 times and then threatened to stab me up my queer arse. I have to say, my friends had brought me to Ibiza, to their place in Ibiza for a break for 5 days. We came back to the house being all taped up by the police where the stabbing had taken place. Oh, no. And of course, the police then were coming to me looking for statements. These other drug junkies from around Notting Hill, where I was at the time, were threatening me if I said anything that they would cut my throat or stick a knife up my queer arse.
Good grief.
And I was still kind of like, I was in an awful place. So anyway, I did tell the police the truth and they did get me moved and I got moved into a very safe place. But I had come back here, I think it was June in 2013, to being very ill. And eventually it took until December 2015 for me to be given that wonderful news that I was undetectable again. And in the meantime, I had to go to food banks. I had to go to all the HIV charities that would help. And that's where I found out about Terence Higgins Trust and that they were doing this program to try to help people back into the workplace. I'd never turned a computer on in my life. I went through this program for 8 months. I succeeded. I listened to this thing that they did in their Positive Voices where people living with HIV were going into schools, talking about it, telling the story. I thought I would love to be able to do that, but to do that you have to be really honest. So I rang my daughter. I told her exactly what was wrong with me. She said, I love you. When you walk into the room, you light it up. And she says, and you can shout it from the rooftops. And you know what? That was the only thing I ever needed to hear. It didn't matter what anybody else thought.
No.
It didn't matter. My child loved me and was proud of me.
That's such a lovely thing to say, isn't it?
And then it started to change. And then Gilead got in touch with me about doing a video. You know, they were doing it for different people. And on it, I just come and say, my name is Rebecca. I'm an author and I'm a businesswoman and I've got HIV. Okay? Now, nobody in Ireland still knew about my HIV. So one evening, it was Friday evening, I put the video up on my Facebook thing. And I said, this is probably the bravest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I closed the thing, sent it and closed it. And opened it on Monday morning. Oh my God, the barrage of people on my side and wishing me well. I mean, I just literally broke down crying. And then it's just gone from strength to strength from that. You know, then Dean Street, I started doing talks here, and then I started doing 56T in front of house. And I just thought, is there anything I can do to help other trans people not go through what I'm going through? And I knew that back in the day, I had seen some could do with help, maybe with makeup, hair, and that was my kind of forte. And also, I was learning a lot about sexual health stuff in here. I thought, what if I could merge the two together? And that's when I came up with boot camp. You know, my project boot camp, and I had done some. I had gone with one of the charities to Kensington Palace one day. I was brought along on a trip, and they told me I could do a day course there to then learn about the history of it, and then I could kind of bring people in. So Kensington Palace became such allies toward us. We have three. Well, if we're not in COVID, each one I do, each 12-week program I do, we have 3 full days at Kensington Palace.
Wow.
You know, that we have training. Then we have another day where we do a photo shoot for hair, makeup, and all that. And then the final, at the end of the 3 months, we have a graduation where people come along to Kensington Palace. We do them up again. We take photographs, but we present them with a certificate and also with a photograph that we've taken of them.
Oh.
And you know what? It's it's about empowering people. Do you know what I mean? And then I thought there's more I can do here. So since then, I get different facilitators to come in. I get CVs done. Do you know what I mean? There's SWATs, different things. And it's amazing when you actually people start, especially trans women, we start to realize that we've more talent than we thought we had. And we've forgotten maybe for what we had before this, you know? So for me, that's what's really important. And that's why I just feel I'm not doing it to get anything. I'm just doing it because I think I look at some of the young trans girls that are even at boot camp with me now or coming, and they're just so, like 1 or 2 of them are actually in university. You know what I mean? And they're so lovely, and and I thought, that's what I fought for. That's what I fought. You know what I mean? And that's why I do what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And I just felt to myself, you know, like I am 62 now. I do walk into places and I'm called ma'am or missus. I'm more worried if they call me ma'am because they think I'm older than I am. So that's all I have to worry about. That's not too bad. It's not when I go in somewhere and they're going, him, he, it's a geezer, it's a man.
Yeah.
You know, all I ever wanted was that. Do you know what I mean? To be allowed to be me and to feel that. And I do that. But it has taken me decades to sit here in front of you and say, and I don't mean in a bit, I love me now. Do you know what I mean? I love the person I am. And I think when you get to there, that's what people see, and that's why I used to think, what changed? I did.
Yeah,
absolutely. More ways than one.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm absolutely loving living my truth. I really am. It just feels incredible. And I've lost count of the number of people who've said to me that I look so much happier. And I'm surprised because it's the real me. I'm living my truth, and it's just a wonderful feeling. It really is. And it's funny. I used to envy some of the young trans people because obviously, you know, the effects of hormones and everything are so much better the younger they are. And it's just incredible. And you know, one big regret that I have is that I'll never be a young woman. You know, I'm 51 now, and you know, so you look at those in their 20s and whatever, and you know, so I will never have that sort of vibrancy and whatever. But then it was pointed out to me that a lot of the youngsters, while yes, physically their transition is more effective, often mentally they struggle a lot more. And the things with people like you and I, you know, we've had all those years of life kicking the hell out of us. And we've got all that life experience to fall back on, and that's what stood us in good stead to be as resilient as we are. And so that's what we can do is to pass our experience on to the youngsters. And I mentor a lot of people as well, and it is so rewarding. And you just give just a little bit of help and a little bit of guidance, whatever, and a bit of hand holding, and you see them blossom. It's
absolutely
lovely, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, and I often think it's like that. You just reminded me of something there too about, you know, I mean, 1991, physically, emotionally, everything, I'm a female. Do you know what I mean? I've lower surgery, top surgery. I am in the right place. My passport is Rebecca Tallon de Havilland. My sex is male. And I've got a vagina. Right?
So the sex on the passport, it said male.
Yeah. You know, and you just think, I haven't been recognised in my country at all for doing this. Not at all. Even all the press they've done on me, they do not recognise me at all as a female.
It's terrible.
So in 2001, and you must remember, this is 10 years later. I'm 10 years my true self. And I'm on holidays in Greece. Get out from Dublin, no problem, to Greece, one of the Greek islands. Have a great holiday with my sister and a few of her friends. And it was a great bonding session for myself and my sister as well. Coming back, I'm stopped by the customs. And they look at my passport and they look at me. And they look at my passport and again they go, no, fake. And I go, I thought they were looking at my boobs. They go, fake. And I said, you female. It says male. And I said, oh, it's because I'm transgender. And there's people behind me. My sister's standing beside me or behind me. I'm sure she was just kind of going like this. And it gets worse. So then I just say to my sister, just get on the flight. I'll have to sort this out. But what about you? I said, I get whatever next flight there is. I didn't know. I just didn't want her to be humiliated any more than I was already feeling it. Then I'm brought into this kind of private room, I think where they probably bring people that are trying to smuggle drugs in to the country. I am strip searched. And to this day, that still affects me, you know. And even I thought, well, at least the humiliation of, at least they know I'm a woman. But I still have forgotten that on my passport it has male. So it convinces them even more that my passport is fake. You see female and male. And they've been really you know, you can only imagine. So it took forever. Eventually they got hold of my surgeon in London and he had to prove that I was who I was. And then I was put on a flight. I think it was 2 days later. But I didn't leave, I wasn't allowed to leave that airport. I wasn't allowed to have a shower, wash, anything.
That's terrible.
So you can imagine when I got back to Dublin how angry I was.
Too right.
And I thought, this is it. So I used my celebrity in Ireland and I went screaming into that passport office and I demanded, and they were like, and there were people that I didn't care. I was so angry. I eventually got to speak with them. I told them what had happened. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, do you want to see my body? Do you want to see what I had to go through? They said, we know you. I said, well, why have I got, you know, anyway, long and short of it, I think it was within 6 weeks I met with they brought me in to give me my passport. Of course, they used it for a photo call, which was great. And of course, the Minister of whatever, Foreign Affairs was there handing me the passport and shaking my hand. And I get it and I open it and it's got F in there.
Yeah.
And joy of it. But then as things changed in Ireland, I was in Ibiza in, I think it was 2015 or 16. And it's all going crazy in Ireland about same-sex marriages and about gender stuff and changing everything. I'm lying on a lounge bed in my friend's thing before I went back to the stabbing as well. And I'm lying there, and next of all, my phone is ringing, and it's the Irish press wanting to talk to me and saying, oh my God, you've been the trailblazer. If it wasn't for you, so many things wouldn't change. And it was then that one of the journalists says to me, you do realise that you changed the law when you did that with your passport. And I like then other trans people in Ireland were saying to me, my God, you've done so much. I said, well, I can't take credit for that because I said the passport thing was a completely selfish thing. It was me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I just thought by default I had changed the law in Ireland as far as passports were concerned. So it's amazing. You just never know what you're doing. And now look at Ireland.
Yeah.
in many ways, it's ahead of us here
It
now.
is. Well, we've gone backwards, haven't we? Let's face it. I mean,
Which is kind of, it's like when we go back to the start of our conversation, I said it was still illegal to be homosexual, let alone trans. So we must have been very illegal back in the 80s. Because it was 90, I think it was 93 when they legalized homosexuality.
God.
And now look at it, it's almost like it's after taking a sprint.
Yeah.
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 So I suppose it just goes to show you just never know. I suppose I'm so happy where I am today, and I just never thought that I would be here, you know. And sometimes people don't realize, you know, even for trans women, people to be even alive at our age, it wasn't heard of, you know.
No.
You know,
No.
so,
And I think this is one of the good things about people like you and I who are very public and are prepared to put our heads above the parapet. Yes, you get shot at, but you know,
yeah,
but because we do this, you know, other people who may be struggling with their gender identity, and because let's face it, nobody wants to admit to themselves they're trans because it's a tough journey. You know, when
yeah,
nobody chooses to be trans, it's just who you are. And but when you're on that journey, if you actually see people who actually just stand up and say, "Yes, I am trans," and it is okay to be trans, by the way, and you
yeah,
can be trans and you can be happy, by the way. um,
yeah,
that sends such a strong message. It really
yeah,
does, and that's why I focus on the positive as much as I possibly can because you know even though I mean I've been through a lot of rubbish as well, but overall I feel so much happier, and I think
yeah.
that is such an important message to get across.
And I think, yeah, sometimes, like, I remember a few journalists would say to me, so if you were to sum it all up in ways, what kind of brought you to where, do you know, an awful lot of it too is a sense of humor. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry. Do you know what I can laugh at things and I can look back on things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's like I remember it's even going back to that kind of question is, you know, like when did things change for me? I remember with my family, if they kind of would refer to my previous name, I'd go crazy at them. And I just kind of one day thought to myself, why did I get so angry with them? It took me this like the time to for me to know exactly who I am, and I expect them to call me Rebecca overnight.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And the like. So I think it's being kinder to, especially family that are used to you.
Yeah.
I don't warrant it coming from somebody who's never known me before and thinks that no,
No.
they get it hot and heavy if they come at me like that. You
Yeah.
know?
But yeah, family does take a lot longer because obviously they've known you for all those years, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but I think it's difficult when you first come out as being trans, admit it to yourself. You're going at 100 miles an hour because it's like a pressure cooker, isn't it? It's been building
yeah,
inside you and building up, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, it just explodes, and you just going at it at 100 miles an hour. But the thing is, you're so much further ahead along your journey to all your loved ones around you. They're still on the starting blocks. They haven't started
yeah,
their journey yet, and so they've got an awful lot of catching up to do, and they haven't got the driving force of gender dysphoria driving them on, which we have, and so
yeah.
and so there's this great big chasm between where we are and where they are, and
Absolutely.
but the trouble is at the time you're so deep into it you can't see that.
Mm,
And I think that's a big thing. And certainly I was guilty of that as anybody else. You know, I was just
yeah,
going for it. I was on a mission. I was just that was it. I was
yeah,
going for it. And you know, and it's only now that I've been able to sort of take stock of it and think, well, actually, yeah, you know, cut them a bit of slack. Yeah,
yeah. And I think as well, like when I eased up on that, I think I always refer to it as like years ago, if you went like me being a Catholic, if I went to church, if you started laughing, it became you couldn't stop. You know, so sometimes if you tell people not to do something, they're more inclined to do it without them even realizing it.
yeah,
And I think when I stopped kind of being angry at my family for doing that, you know, the odd time every now and again it can happen. And I saw one of my sister go, I am so sorry. And I saw the fear in her face, and I thought, I've put that fear there.
yeah,
You know what I mean? That she was, and like this was years later, and I just said, it's fine. And it's just, I'm really, really sorry. But now that I'm fine with it, it doesn't happen,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I always say to people because I think a lot of people, you know, it's a worry about saying the wrong thing, and I always say, look, you know, if you do misgendered me by mistake, or my old name was Martin. If they call me
Yeah.
Martin, then it's okay. Because the thing is, as trans people, we know the people that are supportive and the people who aren't, and
Yeah.
the people that aren't do it deliberately and consistently, and
Yeah.
that's abuse, and that shouldn't be tolerated. But the ones who are supportive, if they just slip up from time to time, it's not a big deal. They just apologise and move on. It's just but they do beat themselves up about it.
Yeah, and I think the bigger a deal you make of it, then it becomes like an issue, So I think, we think alike on things, don't we?
We
Really,
do. We do.
yeah.
Yes. So what's next for you then? Where do you think?
Very good question. I'm at the moment, I'm really happy working here at 5016 Street, 5016, and I love the fact that we have Trans Plus here now, the Gender Dysphoria Clinic, and I like being a peer support worker because I feel I have a lot to bring to it, because obviously I've been through a lot, so I can see things that need to be done as well.
Yeah.
But I'm actually, I'm really delighted that I'm an editor at Boyz magazine, because I think it's going to change things a lot, and it's going to give, they want more kind of non-binary kind of writers, and we're going to have more of a space to be able to do stuff as well. I think that's really important.
That's fantastic.
But long run, I kind of look in the fact and say, well, you're 62 and a half actually. So next step is like 65, old age pension, then 70. Do you know what I mean? But I want to do what I'm doing maybe for the next 6-7 years, build up boot camp. That boot camp can be done throughout pan UK, not just London, everywhere else. And I'd like to be able to take it home as well to Ireland, and then get other people to kind of franchise it out, that other people around the UK can actually run it and reach out to other trans people, that you don't necessarily just have to come and live in London and go through a lot of shit, that you can actually be in your own kind of areas.
Great idea.
And I know that my book is up at the moment. It's gone through to become a film.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
So with that, that's you're the first person I've actually really told that out.
Oh, exclusive.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and it's very, very kind of, it's far ahead. The final script is coming to me very soon, and Katie Brand is one of the writers of the script, and I like her because she's a comedian, and I want a certain amount of comedian, because some of my stuff that I did in my life was quite funny.
Yeah, I think it's important. I use a lot of humour with my public speaking and everything, and I just think it's essential. I think it's important to entertain people as well as educate them.
And I think you break ice. You kind of people then kind of warm to you, and they start looking at you as a human being as well.
Absolutely.
So, and hopefully my book will do well, and I'll probably make quite a bit of money out of it. And I'm going to buy somewhere in Spain and be able to kind of commute between somewhere warm. My bones need heat now, I'm afraid.
But it's funny. I never used to feel the cold, but since being on estrogen, I do. And some of my other trans women friends have said exactly the same. I really do.
And I was off estrogen for years because I was under this illusion, which I was told years ago, that we've been on HIV meds and estrogen could be not work. So I just kind of thought, well, I need to stay alive as well. So I just didn't even think about estrogen. And the last couple of years, oh my God, I was so... Anyway, I got my bloods done here, and my estrogen was so low. But, girlfriend, I started on estrogen about 6 months ago, and things are changing. I thought a lot of things had gone south, and they're not. Everything is beginning to waken up again. Good. Let's put it that way.
Good.
But I feel so much better being on them as well. Do you know what I mean? Because I just felt, at times why am I so tired? Because my brain is like going crazy and wants to do loads of things, but my body doesn't. And it was that. But all of a sudden, yes, things are happening. And then last night, basically had kind of a social distancing kind of little party over at Q Bar for the boot camp girls, and it was lovely. So that'll be my first story in Boyz magazine. Q bar and all the photographs. I think it should be up later on the website.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
then, yeah, so let's put it this way. I'm happy with the way things are going.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's it, and I feel very lucky and blessed that, as I said, that I have this opportunity and that I've lived and this long to appreciate that things are changing.
absolutely. And you've been right at the forefront of that change. And yeah, I think what you've achieved at that is absolutely amazing. So
Uh,
that's brilliant. And thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much for doing this interview. I've absolutely loved it. It's an incredible story you've got, Rebecca. It really is.
Yeah, so I'm told, and people say, "How did you get through it?" I said, "I suppose like anybody else, we just put one foot in front of the other and
It's,
hope for the best."
it's just survival, isn't it?
Yeah, and you just hope you don't land on a landmine.
Absolutely.
Basic. Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And
my pleasure.
yeah.
Anytime.
Oh, that's great. And thank you for watching Cool People. So
It's brilliant. But of
oh,
course, one of my faves is Bobby. I love Bobby Pickard, and what she does as well is
oh,
amazing.
Bobby's wonderful. She's great.
Yeah.
She's lovely.
And I think it's great that you do this, that you're highlighting people that are doing stuff rather than, and it just seems to be all negative. Nobody seems to be doing anything. Where there's a lot of us doing a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely, yeah. And
know?
this is what I try to focus on, and I think storytelling's very powerful, and that's the whole
Yeah,
idea with Cool People is just to tell
yeah,
people stories, and then you can discuss the issues around those as it goes along, and people get a much greater appreciation of what it is to be
yeah.
have HIV or whatever the thing is.
And
Yeah.
I think it's really important as well that we stick together. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, what's that saying? Together we conquer, divided we fall. And I think that's really important. And we're not. We don't have to agree with everybody in everything they say. That's normal. That's human. You know what I mean? But we need to stick together. We need to fight together and be together and things like
Yeah.
that. Sometimes I see things go too much like a divide, and I just think, let's come on,
Yeah.
stick
Absolutely.
together.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Rebecca.
My
And
pleasure.
And thank you to the viewers for watching. And please catch up with me on the next edition of Cool People. I've got lots more cool people lined up. So stay tuned and see you on the next one.